Okay, so good morning, everyone. So let's have a quick market recap on yesterday's data. So yesterday, there's nothing much, but to be specific, on the US session, we have the consumer confidence for the month of June for US. So previous data was 120 and forecasted at 119. And release time last night, 10 p.m. And for the month of June, the consumer confidence for US was 127.3. So it beats the market forecasted data and the previous data as well. But right after the release on the dollar index, there's actually no significant effect before the US session closes. But during the Asian session, the current price of dollar index was around the 91.90 level. And earlier we have the weekly crude oil stock. So previous data is negative 7.199 M and forecasted at negative 4.460 M. And earlier this time 4:30 in the morning. And for the weekly crude oil stock, it was negative 8.153 M. But for today, after the release of the weekly crude oil stock, there's actually a modest gains around the 73.20 during the Asian session. So economic data today, we have to focus on the European session. So later at 2 p.m. we have GDP, quarter-on-quarter basis and year-on-year basis for the first quarter. And 5 p.m. we have inflation rate for Eurozone, month-on-month and year-on-year basis for the month of June. So we can expect that it will be a very busy market for the GBP and the Euro currencies later. Meanwhile, the US session, we have to focus on the ADP or the private sector employment for the US dollar, for the US. So release time 8:15 and followed by the GDP for Canada, a month-on-month basis for April, later at 8:30 p.m. and followed by the weekly crude oil inventories later at 10:30 p.m. So key products for today, first things the euro dollar. During the Asian session, the current price is around the 1.1908. But if overall, if the euro data beats the forecasted, so you might see a rebound of this price above the 1.19. But conversely, if the results didn't pan out, so you might see a slight slip on the downside for this pair. So possible support is 1.1871 and 1.1848, and for the resistance 1.1923 and 1.1952 respectively. Next thing is the British pound against the US dollar. During the Asian session, the current price is around the 1.3860. Now, since the interest rate decision was actually a very disappointing data for the GDP, or for GBP rather, because a lot of traders are expecting that the GBP should overpower the US dollar after the release of the interest rate, but the result was actually opposite. So since we have the GDP for the British pound later, so still majority of the traders, they're expecting that the GBP should rebound from here. So overall, if the results are better than the expectation, so we might see for the price of the GBP to rebound once again. So possible support is 1.3801 and 1.3773, and resistance 1.3870 and 1.3911 respectively. The last thing is the USD against the Canadian dollar. Since we have data for CAD and US, but based on the calendar, both data are expected to be less than the forecasted and the previous. So we might see a neutral effect for this pair after the release of the data. So possible support is 1.2352 and 2304, and for the resistance 1.2425 and 1.2450 respectively. So again, during the European session, there's a data for UK GDP, quarter on quarter and year on year basis, and inflation rate for Eurozone, month on month and year on year basis for the month of June. And US session, we have the ADP, non-farm employment, 815, and GDP for Canada, 830, and 1030 for weekly crude oil inventories. Okay, so overall, since past few days, there's actually less noise in the market, but for today, we can expect that those data will affect the currencies. So we have to be cautious and put a proper risk management, especially if we have a position as of this moment. All right, so thank you everyone. That is all for our daily briefing today. Stay safe and have a great day.